Okay, sir, you can start now.
Okay. So good afternoon, one and all present over here. So today's topic for this gate preparation is engineering mechanics. Myself Vijay Kumar, Department Lecturer, Department of Automobile Engineering, Government Polytechnic of Siripur. So today we are going to cover this particular contents during this 1.5 hour. That is P-word diagram and equilibrium, friction, its application including rolling friction, belt pulley, brakes and clutches, screw jacks, wedge, vehicles, etc. Basically, it is very vast topic to cover this entire curriculum or entire contents of this particular topic in a provided 1 hour, 1.5 hour. It is very quite impossible to cover all these things. But I'm going to just brush up the things. So already you were prepared for this engineering mechanics and related these subtopics. But I'm going to just brush up the things and just uh, uh, just revise the things related to these mechanics. As we told know that this what is this exactly statics means what it is what the study of forces and condition of equilibrium of the material of the bodies at rest subjected to action of the forces. Again, then dynamics is nothing but the uh, it is the mechanics which is related to or which associated with the motions of the rigid bodies and correlation between these forces acting on this particular body as well as its effect on their motion. Again, these dynamics can be converted or can be classified according to this kinematics as well as kinetics. So in this kinematics, there will be the space-time relationship of this given motion of the body and not all with the forces acting on the motion. And in case of this kinetics, the study of the laws of motion of material bodies under the action of forces or kinetics is the study of relation between the forces and resulting motion. So there is you keep in mind that is a kinetic. What is the difference between this kinematics and as well as kinetics? So these are certain important definitions which is related to this engineering mechanics. First is a continuum. So it can be defined as a non-special whole which has no empty space and no part is distinct from the adjacent part. Considering object in this way ignores that the matter present in the object is made up of atoms and molecules. After that, particle. This particles is nothing but the body which has a finite mass, but dimensions cannot be neglected. Particle. Then system of particles, when a group of particles which are interrelated and deal together for studying the behavior is called as a system of particles. Again, rigid body. Uh, Rigid body, as we know that the body which does not goes under any deformation after application of this particular force. So again, matter is nothing but the which occupies the space. Again, mass is nothing but the measure of inertia, or mass of body is the quantity of matter contained in the body, and it is a sum of the masses of its constituent of mass points. So these are important terms associated with this engineering mechanics, and we are dealing with particular rigid body. Uh, so as we know that what is tension, thrust, and force. So tension is nothing but the pulling force which is acting throughout the string, which is the tight position. So this is you can see in this particular diagram what is this tension. After that thrust, it is acting in the inward direction and it is a pushing force transferred to the light rod. That is what the thrust. So we already studied this compressive force as well as tensile force. In case of this tensile force, there is a application of this tensile force, and in case of this thrust there is a pushing force, that is a pushing force. Again, you can see this is a force. What is exactly this force? As you know that or you might be studied, this force may be defined as any action which tends to change the state of rest or uniform motion of the body when it is applied. So this force having magnitude, point of application, direction as well as line of action. Again, if you see the classification of or system of the forces, then it may be coplanar forces and non coplanar forces. In these coplanar forces, there will be collinear forces and concurrent forces. Again, these non-concurrent forces, can be classified into parallel forces and non-parallel forces. Again, these parallel forces is classified into like parallel forces and unlike parallel forces. Again, non-coplanar forces in that concurrent forces and non-concurrent forces. Again, the non-concurrent forces can be classified into parallel and general, and then parallel forces can be classified into like parallel and unlike parallel forces. This is what general classification of system of forces, which we are going to take in while calculating the various various uh, various parameters in this study of engineering mechanics. So if you see, this is a coplanar and non-coplanar forces. The forces which act along a same plane is called as a coplanar, and the forces which does not acting in the same plane, it is called as a non-coplanar forces. Then collinear forces which acting upon the in the same line, then it is called as a collinear forces. Then concurrent forces which acts at a single point or which acts through the single point, it is called as concurrent forces. And this system is called as a concurrent force system. And if this force is not acting at a single point, then it can be treated as a non-concurrent force system. You can observe in second figure, that is figure B, it will be non-concurrent forces and parallel and non-parallel forces. If you see in first figure, F1, F2, F3 and F4, which are parallel to each other. And so this system or this force system is called as a parallel force system. And if you observe in case of the second diagram, the F4 is some inclined position. So this is what the non-parallel force system. So you might be aware about this force resolution of the forces, and this Cartesian coordinate system. How how is the notation, that is a designation of this force which lies in the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant, and their signs, how it will changes. You might be studied very well. Again, like parallel forces and unlike parallel forces. You see, in case of this parallel force system, the lines of action of the entire constituting forces are parallel to each other in the same direction. Then there is this is called as a like parallel forces. And if these forces if these forces acting opposite to each other, then this will be the unlike parallel forces. You can observe F1 and F2 will be like parallel forces, and F3 and F4 are the unlike parallel forces. So if you see the application or examples of this force system, then it will be collinear forces, forces acting on a rope in a tug of war. Then coplanar forces, system forces acting on a beam subjected to vertical loads, including reactions. So if you see a, a, a beam which is subjected to any simply supported beam and which is subjected to point loads, then it will be a coplanar force system. Then coplanar like parallel, weight of the stationary train on the rail when track is straight, then this will be the coplanar like parallel forces. Then coplanar concurrent forces, force acting on a rod resisting against the wall, it is what the coplanar concurrent forces. Coplanar non-concurrent forces, forces on a ladder resting against a wall when a person stands on a rung which is not at the center of gravity. And no non-coplanar parallel forces, the weight of the benches in a classroom. The non-coplanar concurrent forces, forces on a tripod carrying. Non-coplanar and non-concurrent forces, forces acting on a moving bus. So these are the application, or we can say examples of these various types of force system. Again, this is you might be aware about this now parallelogram of forces. P and Q are the two forces, and R with the resultant. R with the resultant. So, position of this resultant can be calculated by using this tan alpha is equal to Q sin theta divided by P plus Q cos theta. So after simplification, it will be Q alpha is equal to tan inverse of Q sin theta divided by P plus Q cos theta, and magnitude of these forces can be calculated with the help of this small r is equal to in square root P square plus Q square plus 2QP cos of theta. So this is what the law of parallelogram of forces. So if there is a multiple forces acting at a point, that is resolution of the forces. This is very basic of this engineering mechanics. But as a brush up such a things, it is necessary. Suppose this is a force system, and F1 and F2 are the forces. The resultant of these forces can be calculated as summation of H square, that is horizontal forces, plus summation of vertical forces square root and its square. So from this we can calculate the magnitude of the resultant force acting in this particular force system, and we have to find out the position. We have to find out the position of this resultant forces at which it will act. So it can be calculated with the help of this tan theta is equal to summation of V divided by summation H. So where theta is the angle which the resultant vector R makes with the x-axis. So make your own conventions how to resolve the force, how to resolve base force. Sometimes what students will do in some calculations or some examples, it will take the angle with x-axis, and in some examples it will takes the angle with the y-axis. So whatever the sign conventions we have followed, so there is chances of mistake. So you keep your own practice to take the angle either x-axis or y-axis and calculate according to or resolve the forces, or calculate the resultant and position of this resultant accordingly. So this is most important thing, because if there is a changes in sign due to this angle provided to either x-axis or y-axis, it will be major mistake in your calculation. So your entire example may be wrong. So again, this is what the triangle law. Triangle law. You can observe this diagram. So simple relationship has been developed, that is the Q divided by sine alpha, then P divided by sine gamma, and R divided by sine beta. So accordingly, we can calculate the various magnitude of various forces acting in this particular force system. Then collinear forces, you can see how to calculate the resultant of this collinear system. Then summation of F1 plus F2 plus F3, take sign conventions as usual. Again, this is what the coplanar concurrent system, as I told, take a summation Fx, then summation Fy, resolve these forces horizontally and vertically according to these angles. Suppose in this particular P makes an angle theta with x-axis, then vertical component of this force is P sin theta, and horizontal component is P cos theta. Okay, because this angle makes with the x-axis. So if this angle makes with the y-axis, then the or all the sign conventions will change, and accordingly we have to change in this particular calculations, and again find out the resultant in square root fx square plus fy square, and you can find out the angle at which your resultant will present. Again, this is what the coplanar parallel force system. You can simply solve such a type of examples. What we find out the reactions in case of this simply supported beams and all these things. You can simply calculate the movements as well as the whatever the magnitude of the forces acting on this particular elements. Okay. Again, this is a coplanar, non-concurrent, non-parallel force system. Again, resolve the forces and simply follow the procedure as we follow in case of this resolution of forces. And you simply calculate the capital R is equal to summation of fx square plus summation of fy square divided by tan alpha, and find out the position of this resultant. Tan alpha is equal to summation of py divided by summation of fx. Okay, this is very simple. Again, if you see, this is what the one example. Three forces P, 2P, and 3P are extended along the direction of the three sides of the equilateral triangle as shown in the figure. Determine the resultant forces. Determine the resultant forces. So simply you resolve these forces as usual notification you followed. and calculate the value of summation fx as well as summation fy. You can see in this particular diagram, summation fx is equal to p minus 2p cos of theta, cos of 60 degrees. So this is what the equilateral triangle. So in this equilateral triangle, there will be equal angles. So 60 degree, 60 degree, 60 degree, each of this. So p minus 2p cos of 60 degree minus 3p cos of 60 degree, you can observe in this particular diagram. So after calculation or after simplification, it will give the minus 3 by 2 into p. Again, you calculate the summation fy is equal to 2p sine of 60 degree minus 3p sine of 60 degree. Again, after simplification, you will get the simple 0.866 p minus in cube root of, sorry, in square root 3 by 2 into p. So after that, calculate the value of r, that is the resultant or magnitude of the resultant, by putting this value of summation of fx as well as summation of fy, and calculate the value of resultant or magnitude of this resultant, square root of 3 into p. Again, one another example. The resultant of two concurrent forces, 3p, and such types of example can be asked even in your GATE exam. The resultant of two concurrent forces 3p and 2p is r. If the first force is doubled, the resultant is also doubled. Determine the angle between the forces. Determine the angle between the forces. Okay. So you have to use the law of parallelogram of forces in this particular problem. So by applying this law of parallelogram forces, you can write capital R is equal to under square root, that is 3p square plus 2p square plus 2 into 3p into 2p cos of alpha, and after simplification it will be p into square root of 13 plus 12 cos alpha. Again, when angle between these forces, the first force is doubled, then 2r is equal to 6p square plus 2p square plus 2 into 6p into 2p into cos of alpha. After simplification, it will get square root of 4t plus 24 cos alpha. By solving this equation 1 and 2, we get, and after simplification, we get this cos alpha is equal to minus 1/2, that is alpha is equal to 120. Okay, so angle between these two forces is about 120 degrees. So after some practices, will be you will be expert in this particular solving these particular problems of this force system. Okay. So because of time provided, I am not taking this third example. Next is a free body diagram. If you see, this is one important part, how to draw this particular free body diagram of this particular object. If you see in this particular diagram, this is a suppose original component provided. So this is having a W like a weight. So their free body diagram is shown in another picture. So in downward direction, the weight of this particular body will act, and in opposite direction there will be the reaction. So there are certain rules with which we are going to draw this particular free body diagram. Okay. A sketch of the body is drawn by removing the supporting surfaces. If you see in this first diagram, there is a supporting surface, but in case of this free body diagram, there is no supporting surface. So we have to remove this supporting surface in case of this free body diagram. Indicate on the sketches of all the applied or active forces which tends to set the body in motion, such as those caused by the weight of the body, etc. Okay, so show whatever the all the forces acting on this particular body. Okay, again next step is that indicate on this case all the reactive forces, if suppose there are certain supports are there, then support reactions will be there. So in this first diagram, RA is the support reactions. All the relevant dimensions and angles reference axis are sketched are shown on the sketch. A smooth surface is one whose friction can be neglected. This is very important. A smooth surface is one whose friction can be neglected. Smooth surface prevent the displacement of the body normal to the both contacting surface at their point of contact. The reaction of smooth surface or support is directed normal to the both contacting surface as their point of contact and it applied at the point. So if you see some of the examples of this particular body, so in another diagram, this ball is kept on this particular surface. So the free body diagram of this particular ball is like W is acting in downward direction and supporting RA. Then this spring loaded mass hanging is there. So you see in this diagram S and W. Again, this is a ball which touches at point A and B. So if you, in case of this free body diagram, you can see these forces W and H acting on this particular body and support reaction RA and RB will be. So this is what the procedure to how to draw this support reaction or how to draw this free body diagram of given configuration. So this is what the free body diagram for simply supported beam with the roller support at the one end. Again, this is what the free body diagram for the beam is fixed at the one end. Then if you see in case of this stress, how to show or how to draw this free body diagram for particular stress. Okay, what exactly stress? A stress or frame or braced structure is one consisting the number of straight bars joined together at extremities. These bars are the members of the stresses. So plane truss will be there. If the central line of the member of the stress lies in a plane, the stress is called as a plane stress or frame. If the central line are not laying on the same plane, then then in the case of shear lag, the frame is called as a space frame. Okay, two types are there: space frame and plane frame. Two types are there. So as we know that this load, what is this exactly load? Again, what is this node? Again, what is this perfect frame? Perfect frame is nothing but a pin joint frame which has got just a sufficient number of members to resist the loads without undergoing appreciable deformation in a shape is called as a perfect frame. Okay. Again, there are certain types of supports provided for this particular frame structure. The simple supports, pin joint and roller supports, smooth surfaces, fixed on incaster and fixtures. So according to this, there is a free body diagram can be drawn. So for these various types of supports, how to draw the reactions in this particular free body diagram. So in case of this simply supported stress, the reactions are always vertical at the supports. Okay, in case of simply supported truss, the reactions are always vertical at the supports. Again, at the pin joint support, the reaction passes through the joints. The reaction passes through the joints. At a roller surface, the support reaction is vertically upwards at the surface, and the reaction at the support, which has a smooth surface, always normal to the surface. So according to this, we have to draw the free body diagram while drawing the free body diagram for various stresses according to their types of support. Okay, this is what the one example of this free body diagram of this particular stress. You can observe this is what the original figure for of this particular stress. So at point joint A, how it will be uh, free body diagram at point B, at point C, again, sorry, at joint B, at joint C, then joint D, Again joint E, joint F. How to draw? This is the shown in particular slide. Next point is a friction. Next point is a friction. There will be the static friction, limiting friction, and kinetic friction. So, what is this static friction? It is the friction between two bodies, which is the tangential force, and which opposes the sliding of one body related to another. This is what the static friction. Then limiting friction is nothing but the maximum value of the static friction that occurs when motion is impending. Again, kinetic friction is nothing but the tangential force between the two bodies after motion begins, and this value always is less than the corresponding static friction. And angle of friction is nothing but the angle between the action of line of total reaction of one body on another and normal to the common tangent between the bodies when the motion is impending. That is tan alpha is equal to F divided by R is equal to mu R divided by R. Basically, this principle of friction can be used in case of these brakes as well as your screw jack as well as your um, clutch system. Okay, then you have to calculate this coefficient of friction, coefficient of static friction, and this can be calculated with the formula that is a limiting force of friction divided by this normal reaction, that is F divided by R. F divided by R, that is a coefficient of static friction, and that can be denoted by this mu. That can be denoted by mu. Again, angle of response. You can see this angle of response in this particular diagram. One block is there having weight W on this rub and a plane inclined to the angle alpha with the horizontal. This R is nothing but the normal reactions, and F will be the force of friction. So by applying the condition of equilibrium, algebraic sum of these forces result along the plane is the W sin alpha is equal to F and W cos alpha. And in case of this perpendicular resolution, W cos alpha is equal to R. So tan alpha is equal to F divided by R. Tan alpha is equal to F divided by R. So angle of plane is equal to angle of friction. Angle of plane is equal to angle of friction. Suppose the angle of plane alpha is increased to the value of phi, so that the block is at the point of sliding or state of impending the motion. Then at this angle mu is equal to tan alpha is equal to alpha is equal to tan lambda. So lambda is equal to alpha. Hence the angle of response is defined as the angle at which inclined plane may be raised before an object resting on it will move under the action of force of gravity and reaction of the plane. The angle of response will be the is equal to angle of plane. Okay. So there are certain types of laws of this particular friction. First law, second law, third law, and fourth law. So in case of this first law, friction always opposes the motion and comes into play only when a body is urged to move. Okay, so frictional force will always act in the direction opposite to which the body tends to move. This is what the first law. Second law is the magnitude of the frictional force is just sufficient to prevent the body from moving. That is, only much resistance is required to prevent the motion will be offered by the friction. Again, third law is limiting frictional force or resisting bear to a constant ratio of the normal reaction. This ratio depends on the nature of surface in a contact. The limiting frictional resistance is dependent on the area of contact. Again, fourth law is when the motion takes place at one body slides over the another, the magnitude of the frictional force or resistance will be slightly less than offered force at a condition of limiting equilibrium. And the magnitude of the frictional force will depend only the nature of sliding surface and independent on the shape or extent of the contact surface. So these are the basic laws of this particular friction. Again, force determination of a different scenario. First is a least force required to drag a body on a rough horizontal surface, and this can be calculated by using this. You can observe in this particular diagram. There is one block rested on the horizontal plane and having weight W, and P will be the force which acts through the angle theta, that is a pulling force, and this opposing force F is equal to mu r. So minimum or P least, that is minimum force required, can be calculated with the help of this W sin alpha divided by cos theta minus phi. So it will be P least is equal to W sin into phi. Again, force acting on a block, force acting on a block along with the rough inclined plane, along with the inclined plane. So if you see this block is and you can observe the motion, direction of motion. So motion down the plane P is equal to W sin alpha minus pi divided by cos phi, and for the motion up the plane P is equal to W sin W alpha plus pi divided by cos phi. Okay. Again, force acting horizontally on a block resting on the rough or inclined plane. You can observe motion, for motion down the plane P is equal to W tan into alpha minus phi, and for the motion of the plane is equal to P into W tan alpha plus phi. Okay. Again, cone of friction. If you see in this particular diagram, this OR is nothing but the normal reaction offered by the surface of the body, and if you see the frictional force acting in the opposite direction, that is OB, along OB, assuming that a body in case of the state of equilibrium, limiting equilibrium, then the resultant reaction makes an angle phi with the normal OR. If the body slides in any other directions, the resultant reaction S will be still makes same angle with the normal. Okay, so this angle is known as a cone of friction. This angle is known as a cone of friction, and this can be denoted with the help of this phi. Okay, again you might be studied this lifting machine in the your first year curriculum. That is lifting machine. You aware about this lever, then inclined plane, wedge, wheel and axle, winch crab, then pulley system and pulley, screw jack, and important terminology in this particular: load, effort, input, output, velocity ratio, mechanical advantage, and percentage mechanical efficiency of that particular machine. Okay. So load is nothing but a machine has to either lift a load to overcome the resistance, and it can be usually denoted with the help of this W. Again, as effort is considered, which is applied to machine to lift the load or to overcome the resistance against the movement. Again, input to the machine, effort into distance moved by the effort, that is a P into Y in a Newton meter, and output of the machine is nothing but the load into distance, that is again it is in Newton meter. So VR, velocity ratio, distance moved by the effort divided by distance moved by the load, that is a Y by X. And in case of this all machines, Y is always greater than X. In case of all machines, Y is always greater than S. And simply calculated, that is a mechanical advantages, weight lifted by effort applied. This is what the mechanical advantages. That is, it is the ratio of load or weight lifted to the effort applied. Then, in case of this idle machine, VR, that is velocity ratio, is equal to mechanical advantages, and efficiency of the machine can be calculated with the help of this relation, that is efficiency is equal to output of the machine to the input of the machine into 100. Okay, and you keep in mind this is the relation between this mechanical advantage, velocity ratio, and efficiency. So efficiency is equal to W into X divided by P into Y. It can be rewritten as W divided by P divided by Y by R, that is MA divided by VR. That mechanical efficiency is nothing but the MA divided by VR. Okay. So an output can be calculated as input minus losses due to friction. Reversible and irreversible machine. Okay. What is this reversible machine? When the load W gets lowered on the removal of the effort, then it is called as a reversible machine. And in case of irreversible machine, when the load W does not fall down on the removal of the effort, in this case, it is called as a irreversible machine. Okay. If you know that the screw jack is nothing but the irreversible machine. Screw jack is a irreversible machine. After removing the effort, means what? This can be used in case of this vehicle or lifting some sort of load or some sort of load. So it is what the irreversible machine. And irreversibility or self-locking of a machine is that its efficiency should be less than the 50%. And compound efficiency is nothing but the, or you can say overall efficiency. It is a combination of the machine and it is a product of effectiveness of the individual machines. It is called as a compound efficiency. Again, law of machine is a P is equal to mw plus c, where P is the effort, W is the corresponding load, and M and C are the constant that can be determined in any machines after the conducting the series of tests and plotting the W versus P graph. You might be studied this law of machines in your first year engineering mechanics, and you might be drawn this particular graph also. So this mechanical advantages can be written as 1 by M, and expression of this maximum efficiency can be given by N max is equal to 1 divided by M into VR. Again, you might be studied the screw jack or the lifting machine. So this lifting machine can be used to lift this particular heavy load. It mainly consists the nut which from the body of the jack, and efficiency of this particular screw jack can be calculated as tan alpha divided by tan alpha plus phi. And this phi is nothing but the angle of friction, and alpha is nothing but the angle of helix of this particular thread provided to that particular screw jack. Okay. There are two conditions when weight is lifted, and another one condition is weight is lowered. So in that, suppose P be the effort applied to end of the handle, and L be the length of the handle, and D will be the mean diameter of the screw. Then tan alpha is equal to P divided by pi D, and where P is nothing but the pitch. P is nothing but the pitch. Okay, and tan alpha is equal to mu. So P is equal to W divided by 2L into P plus mu into pi D divided by pi D minus mu P. You might be derived this expression in case of your machine design. Again, for the weight W to be lower, same notation will be there, and this QE is nothing but actual effort at the end of handle. It can be W divided by 2L into mu into pi D minus P divided by pi D plus mu P. And for n number of threaded, tan alpha is equal to NP divided by pi D. This simple relationship you might be studied in case of your machine design. I'm not going to take too much detail because of time availability. Okay, so this is what the screw jack, basic engineering mechanics, and all these things. Now, application of this friction is the design of clutch as well as brakes. Design of brakes as well as clutch. So, what is this clutch exactly? Clutch is a mechanical element which connects two shafts having relative motion, as per the wheel of operator or wheel of the driver. Okay. So aim is to transfer the motion from one shaft to another shaft. Everyone you might be operated a vehicle and operated clutch also. Okay. So as we see, there will be the gradual engagement of there is always gradual engagement of the clutch, and all the automotive clutches or whatever the clutches used in automotive application, these are the frictional clutches or frictional clutches are there. Basically, there are, as we see, the classification of this particular clutch is a positive engagement clutches and progressive engagement clutches. So all these frictional clutches comes under this progressive clutch, progressive clutches. Again, there is one question: what exact difference between clutch and brakes? What exact difference between clutch and brakes? Because these both units, clutch units as well as these brake units, always operates on the principle of friction. Friction. So in case of this clutch, as we know that this clutch is always in engaged position, always in engaged position. Okay. So when clutch operates, then there will be the then there will be the uh, disengagement of two shafts. Okay. So initial condition is what both shafts are connected together. Both shafts are connected together. So after engagement of clutch, both shafts are rotates. After engagement of clutch, both shafts are rotated. But in case of this brakes, in case of this brake, after application of brake, both the motions are stopped. Both the motions are stopped. Okay. Javala clutch. If we are going to engage the clutch, then both the shafts are rotated in rotating condition, and after application or engaging of the brake, then both the input as well as output motion will get stopped. Will get stopped in case of this particular brake. So this is what the basic difference between clutch and brake. This is what the basic difference of the clutch and brake. If you see this automotive clutch, as I told, all the automotive clutch are frictional clutches, because uh, as application is concerned, this automotive clutch it can be used in between this engine as well as gearbox, because we can't develop this particular engine RPM uh, engine engine RPM with very low speed, because this is what the limitation of internal combustion engine. We can't operate this particular ICE engine with the 10 RPM, 5 RPM, etc. So there is a need of transfer of one shaft which rotates higher RPM to the one shaft which is stationary. So there must be gradual engagement of one shaft to another shaft. So this function can be carried with the help of this automotive clutch. There are certain requirements, or we can say requirement of clutches. So clutch, as a requirement of these clutches are concerned, clutch may be designed principally to satisfy the four requirement. The necessary actuation force should not be excessive. The coefficient of friction should be constant. The energy converted to heat must be dissipated. Wear must be limited to provide reasonable clutch life. These are basically requirement of this particular clutch design. And if you see the classification, or we can say the types of clutches, then there are various types of clutches can be used in automotive as well as industrial application. That is mechanical clutches, pneumatic or hydraulic clutches, electrical clutches, magnetic clutches, then positive contact, square jaw, spiral jaw, toothed jaw, friction type, disc, drum, cone, overrunning, roller, sprag, then spring wound, magnetic particle, hysteresis, eddy current, then fluid coupling, dry fluid, hydraulic clutches, etc. etc. Okay. Again, this is what the positive contact types of clutches. Positive type of clutches. Okay, you see these particular jaws are provided, or certain types of tooths are provided for the positive contact of this particular two shafts. This is what the clutch selection criteria as per the applications. In case of this, if you see the single plate clutch used when the diameter is not restricted and simple construction, then there will be the automotive drives. Generally, in case of these heavy vehicles, there will be the single plate clutch, and in case of this multi plate clutch, the area is also restricted area will be there. Then there is the application of this multiple disc clutch. Generally, in case of this two-wheeler, there will be the multi-plate clutch. You might be aware about this particular nomenclature of this disc clutch, that is a flywheel, then friction plate, then crankshaft or motor shaft, then pressure plate assembly, again various types of springs provided, again this type of thrust bearing, again these splined shaft also. All these things you might be studied in case of this your automotive uh, uh, automobile engineering subject. Again, this is the number of plates are there. Then disc clutches. This may be single plate clutch or multi plate clutch. So generally, multi-plate disc clutches enable greater torque capacity, but are harder to cool. Frictional clutches can be run dry or wet using oil. So in case of this two-wheeler, number of plates are there. That is a multi-plate clutch is there. So for the cooling purpose, they are all dip clutch. So wet clutch can be used in case of this two-wheeler. Then typical coefficients of frictions are 0.07 for the wet clutch and 0.45 for the dry clutch. Again, running a clutch weight, while running a clutch weight in oil reduces the coefficient of friction. It enhances the heat transfer and potential for the cooling for the components. The expedient solution for this reduction of the friction coefficient to use more disc, and hence the use of multiple disc clutches. While designing this particular clutch, there are two assumptions: uniform wear theory and uniform pressure theory will be there. You might be studied in case of this clutch design. See, in this particular diagram, this is what the surface area of this particular friction plate, and we will take the small area of this particular friction surface having delta r is a radius at position delta r. So the area of elemental and angular ring on this particular disc clutch is delta A is equal to 2 pi r into dr, 2 pi r dr. Very small area can be considered for the analysis. So now F is equal to PA, F is equal to PA, where P is nothing but the uniform interface pressure. So delta F is equal to 2 pi r P into delta r. Again, normal force. So we have to calculate a normal force acting on this entire surface by integrating Ri to Ro. Ri is the internal resistance and Ro is the external resistance. So capital F is equal to integration Ri to Ro 2 pi Rp into dr. After simplification, we will get 2 pi P in square root R square divided by 2 Ri to Ro. Capital F is equal to pi P Ro square minus Ri square. So F is also necessary to force required to clamp the force disc clutches together. Next is a friction torque. Friction torque delta T that can be developed on the elemental ring is a delta T is equal to R into mu into delta F. So by putting these values of this delta F in this particular equation, we get 2 into mu into pi into r square into p into delta r, where mu is the coefficient of friction, which models the less than the ideal frictional contact occurs between the two surfaces. Then total torque can be calculated as capital T is equal to integration Ri to Ro into 2 pi into mu into r square P into dr is equal to 2 pi P into mu r cube divided by 3. Ri to Ro is equal to 2 by 3 into pi into P into mu into Ro cube minus Ri cube. So this equation represents what? The torque transmission capacity of the single plate clutch. Okay, in practice, clutches are use an even number of frictional surfaces. So torque transmission capacity with the n surface can be given as P is equal to 2 by 3 into pi into P into mu into n rho cube minus Ri cube. So substituting the forces for the pressure P gives the equation for this particular torque transmission, that is 2 by 3 is equal to mu into Fn rho cube minus Ri cube divided by r square minus Ri square. Okay, this is what the torque transmission capacity, or while we are going to design particular torque by considering uniform pressure theory, then we will get this particular equation for the torque transmission, that is capital T is equal to 2 by 3 into mu into Fn rho cube minus Ri cube divided by r square minus Ri square. Again, second theory is a uniform wear theory. Second theory is a uniform wear theory. In case of this uniform wear theory, uh, the rate of wear can be assumed to be proportional to the product of pressure and velocity. The rate of wear can be assumed to the product of pressure and velocity. So, PR into omega is a constant. PR into omega is a constant, and maximum pressure is nothing but for a constant angular velocity. The maximum pressure will occur at the smallest radius, that is P max Ri into omega is equal to constant. So eliminating the angular velocity and constant give the relationship between the pressure as a function of a radius r, that is P is equal to P max Ri into r. Again, this is what the dynamic friction coefficient, permissible and permissible contact pressure and temperature limits. For this, there are various types of material can be used as a frictional material for the automotive application. So we can take suitable value of this P max and value of this mu while designing this particular frictional surface. Then you can see this axial force acting on this delta F can be calculated as 2 pi into P into R dr. Again, integrating capital F Ri to Ro 2 pi PR into dr, we get the equation 2 pi P max Ri into Ro minus Ri. Then torque transmission can be calculated as delta T is equal to mu R into delta F, that is capital T is equal to integration of Ri to Ro 2 pi mu into P max Ri RdR is equal to P max into mu pi Ri Ro square minus Ri square. By rearranging the terms, we get P max is equal to capital F divided by 2 pi Ri Ro minus Ri. Okay, so these two methods are basically used to design this particular friction plate or clutch design, uniform pressure theory and uniform wear theory. And you have to calculate the equations for this torque transmission capacity as well as force required. Okay. After substituting, you can see final equation will be there. T is equal to mu nf divided by 2 into Ro plus Ri. Then maximum torque for any outer radius, and it can be given as with the formula Ri is equal to in square root 1 divided by 3 into Ro, where Ro is the outer radius, and Ri is the inner radius. So if you see the design of these particular clutches are usually designed based on the uniform wear theory. Then the uniform wear assumptions give the lower torque capacity clutch than the uniform pressure assumption. The preliminary design procedure for the disc clutch design requires the determination of torque, speed, specification of space limitations, selection of material, and the selection of principal radii Ro and Ri. Common practice is to set the values of Ri in between 0.45 Ro and in between 0.8 R. Okay, these are the simple practices followed during this particular clutch design. If you see the procedure for this particular clutch design is the determining the initial geometry of the geometry is itemed as below. Determine the service factor, then determine the required torque capacity, that is capital T is equal to power divided by omega. Then determine the coefficient of friction, determine the outer radius, find the inner radius, then axial actuation force required. Again, if you see the materials required, the material used for the clutch plate is a typically gray cast iron or steel. The friction surface will consist of lined material which may be molded, oven, sintered or solid. The molded linings consist of polymetric resin used to bind the powder fibrous material and brass and zinc chips. Okay, this is what about the clutches. After that, the brake, the basic function of this brake is to absorb the kinetic energy and dissipate it in the form of heat. If you see one example, the idea of the magnitude of energy that must be dissipated can be obtained from the considering the familiar example of the car undergoing the emergency stop in 7 seconds from the 60 mile per hour, that is 96 kilometer per hour. Okay, so if you see the car mass, if you have to assume that particular things, car mass is about 1400 kg, and assuming the 65% of the car weight is loaded onto the front axle during the rapid braking, then the load on the front axle is given by 1400 into 9.81 into 0.65 is about 8927 Newton. Okay. Again, this will be shared between the two brakes. So the energy that must be absorbed by one brake is equal to capital E is equal to 1/2 into mvi square minus vf square, and E is equal to, by putting this value, 1/2 into 8927 divided by 9.1 into 0.5 into 96 into 10 raised to 3 divided by 3600 bracket square minus 0 square is equal to 161.8 kilojoule. Okay, if the car brakes uniformly in 7 seconds, then the heat that must be dissipated, it is about 167.8 into 103 divided by 7, that is a 23.1 kilowatt. And from your experience of heat transfer, say 1 kilowatt domestic heaters, you will recognize that heat is significant quantity of heat to transfer away from the relatively compact components that makes the brake assemblies. Then convective heat transfer can be modeled by Fourier's equation, that is Q is equal to HA delta T, that is HA into TS minus TF. This equation indicates that the ability of brake to dissipate the heat generated increases as the surface area increases as the heat transfer coefficient rises. For air, the heat transfer coefficient is usually dependent on the local flow velocity and the geometry, and method often used for the disc brake to increase both the surface area and the local flow is to machine multiple axle or radial holes in the disc. So types of brakes are mechanical brakes, pneumatic and hydraulic brake, electrical brake, automatic brake. Then there will be the friction brake, disc and drum brakes, magnetic brakes, brakes are there. Again, you can see this is what the comparative table for brake performance. We will take the one example for suppose external drum brake, leading and trailing shoes are there. Then maximum operating temperature is low, brake factor is medium, stability is medium, dryness factor is unstable if humid, poor if wet, then dust and dirt good. Typical application: mills, elevators, winders. So this is what the comparative table on from which we can select the particular brake according to the applications. Then self-energizing brakes. Brakes can be designed so that once engaged, the actuating force applied is assisted by the braking torque. These kind of brakes are called as a self-energizing brakes and useful for the braking the large loads. Again, self-locking uh, is nothing but the great care must be exercised in case of this brake design. It is possible and sometimes desirable to design a brake which once engaged will grab and lock up, called as a self-locking action of this particular brake. You might be aware about these types of disc brake. Again, torque capacity of this particular disc brake can be calculated by with the help of equation capital T is equal to mu into F into Re, where Re is nothing but the effective radius of this particular brake. Then actuating force for this particular disc brake can be calculated as P is equal to F is equal to PAB into theta Rho square minus Ri square divided by 2, and by assuming uniform wear theory, that is capital F is equal to P max into theta into Ri, Rho minus Ri. Then relationship between the average and maximum pressure for the uniform wear assumption is the P average divided by P max is equal to Ri divided by Rho divided by 1 plus Ri divided by Rho. Again, if you see the effective radius, that is Re is equal to 2 by 3 Rho cube minus Ri cube divided by 3 into Rho square minus Ri square. By assuming uniform wear, that effective radius can be calculated as Re is equal to Ri plus Rho divided by 2. Then this is what the ratio for capital R to small r. Then delta is equal to Re divided by R. Then P max upon P average. Okay. While designing, we can assume this particular value for this particular brake. If you see an example, the caliber brake is required for the front wheels as a sport car with the braking capacity of 1820 Newton meter for each brake. Preliminary design estimate have set a brake geometry, that is Ri is equal to 100 mm and Rho is 160 mm and theta is equal to 45 degree. A pad with a coefficient of friction is about 0.35 has been selected. Determine the required actuating force and average and maximum contact pressure. We have to calculate this average actuating force and the average and maximum contact pressure in this particular example. So, if you see the torque capacity per pad can be calculated as 820 divided by 2, that is 410 Newton meter, and effective radius can be calculated as 0.1 plus 0.16 divided by 2, that is 0.13. Okay. Next is a actuating force can be calculated as capital F is equal to T divided by mu into Re, that is 410 divided by 0.35 into 0.13 is equal to 9.011 kilonewton. The maximum contact pressure can be calculated as P max is equal to capital F divided by theta into Ri, Rho minus Ri. So after putting these values in this particular equation, we get P max is equal to 1.912 meganewton per meter square, and average pressure can be calculated as P average is equal to P max is equal to 2 Ri divided by Rho divided by 1 plus Ri plus Rho is equal to 1.471 meganewton per meter square. Next is the drum brakes. Drum brakes apply the friction to the external and internal circumference of the cylinder. The drum brake consists the brake shoe which has the friction material. You might be seen all these types of brake drum. There are certain types of drum brakes. Types of drum brakes also. Drum brakes can be divided into two groups depending on whether the brake shoe is external or internal to the drum. The further classification can be made in terms of the length of brake shoe, short, long, or composite band. You see the stability. One problem associated with this particular drum brakes is the stability. If the brakes has been designed so that the braking torque is not sensitive to small changes in the coefficient of friction, which would be occur if the brakes is worn or wet, then the brakes is said to be stable. If the small change in the coefficient of friction causes a significant change in the braking torque, then the brake is called as unstable, and it will tend to grab if the friction coefficient rises, or braking torque or will drop noticeably if the friction coefficient reduces. Okay, so this is what the important thing, stability of the brake. Again, Again, this is what the internal brake drum and terminology of this particular brake. So in that, again, leading and trailing shoes will be there. Leading and trailing shoes. If you see in this particular diagram, this is the terminology of this brake. If you see, this is a hydraulic cylinder. Then this is what the retaining spring. Again, this is the anchor pin or abutments. Then shoe heel. Then brake lining. This is what the drum. This is what the leading shoe, and this is what the trailing shoe. In case of this long shoe internal drum brakes, the brake can be actuated by the double hydraulic piston expander, which forces the pre-ends of the brakes apart so that the non-rotating shoe comes into frictional contact with the rotating brake drum. The leading and trailing shoes layout consists the pair of the leading and trailing shoes layout consists the pair of shoes pivoted at the common anchor point. So if you see, this is what the leading shoe. What exactly you try to understand what exact difference between this leading shoe as well as trailing shoe. In case of this leading shoe, is identified as the shoe whose expander piston moves in the direction of rotation of the drum. Okay, the leading shoe is identified as the shoe whose expander piston moves in the direction of rotation of the drum. The frictional drag between the shoe and the drum will tend to assist the expander piston in forcing the shoe against the drum, and the action is referred as a self-energizing or self-servo action of the shoe. And in case of this trailing shoe, expander piston moves in the direction opposed to the rotating of the drum. Expander piston moves in the opposite direction in the rotation of the particular drum. So the frictional force opposes the expander, and hence the trailing brake shoes provide less braking torque than an equivalent loading shoes actuated by the same force. Okay, this is about the clutch and brakes. Okay, we studied in this particular 1 hour engineering mechanics, different types of force systems, then various principles, law of parallelogram of forces, Lami's theorem, as well as friction, laws of friction, again terminology of frictions, again whatever the terms associated with this mechanics of friction, again clutches, its types, characteristics of clutches, classification of the clutches, then important terminology associated with these clutches, requirement of clutches, brakes, etc. This is from my side. Thank you very much.
ओके, थँक्यू सर. कोणाला काही विचारायचं का बेटा?